You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. Right now, in this moment, I'm just feeling grateful for that. I'm feeling not in a rush. I'm feeling not dissatisfied with the pace. I'm feeling exactly where I need to be in the mess that has unfolded in my life.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. I'm your host, Dave. And this week is a little bit different because Felicia is normally your host, but this week it's going to be me, and we are going to actually be interviewing Felicia. I am Felicia's boyfriend, significant other, business partner, I guess jack of all trades. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into our interview.
Hi, everyone. I'm right here.
Sweet. So this week is actually really special, and it's one of Felicia's, I guess, favorite times of year. One of my favorite times of year, too, for a couple different reasons. One, the summer solstice is tomorrow, June 21st.
June 21st in most of the world, but it's actually June 20th here.
There you go, June 20th. The summer solstice is today. There we go.
We're recording this on Sunday.
Yeah, I was a day off. So, but yeah, we are hopping in to discuss a little bit about that, why it's a special time of year, and then just talk about and reflect on what last year really meant to Felicia and what this year is going to mean. You know, another year wiser, another year older.
Are you trying to say that it's my birthday?
Yeah, it's her birthday. So happy birthday. Awesome. So let's go ahead and hop in. My first question I wanted to ask you is more of a reflection on what last year really meant to you. So I'm going to preface this in two different ways. One, what was your biggest learn? And what was the thing you were most proud of last year?
Okay. Last year is in my year of being 33.
Yes.
Okay. What was my biggest learn, and what is the biggest thing or the thing I'm most proud of? That's a great question to start off. Really difficult right out of the bat. You know, I think that my biggest learn from last year was that I don't have control over everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, I always am learning that, but when I look back at 33, I just think it was a constant learning that I don't have control and that I have to let go, and that sometimes going with the flow, even when you're just treading water or finding your stride or some mixture of all of the above, that's enough. And that probably also ties into the thing I'm most proud of, because just finding as much grace as I could, and I probably could have found more grace, but finding as much grace as I could to get through all of the stress of the last year. Like, since this time last year, I look back and I'm like, wow, so much has changed. And like, there were so many hard things, and different kind of hard than we've ever experienced before. But I'm just proud of that. I'm proud of for just finding the flow and getting through it and not giving up.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with that. It was a lot of, just unknowns, right? It was a lot of stuff out of our control, and I'm sure the world and our listeners feel that too, you know, with the pandemic, and there was a lot of time to reflect. And I think if we look at the silver lining in that, it's really about, like, how are we serving ourselves? How are we serving our communities, the people around us, our family? I think a lot of people woke up to the fact that, like, hey, I don't want to do this thing that's not benefiting me. I don't want to do this thing that I am struggling with and I do have control over, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of was a beautiful thing for a lot of people, and I definitely felt that. And that sort of leads me into my next question. Moving forward after your birthday, so this next year, have you thought about what you want to accomplish, what you're maybe afraid to accomplish or afraid to address, you know, as you continue to grow personally, spiritually, those sort of things? Like, is there an intention for this next year of your life?
Yes. I would say it's a little bit hazy. It's not like super crystal clear, sharp. But I did take some time earlier today before we recorded this just to be like celebrate the summer solstice, and because it's so close to my birthday, I like to use this time to kind of recalibrate and really set intentions for the year ahead. And in some ways, I like it better than doing it on January 1st, just because I personally feel a lot more energy when the sun's out for a lot longer. And
Yeah, I
like
was
this
about
time
to
of
say,
year,
you feel like you have been like the Energizer bunny
I
for the last
have.
couple days. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking, in the last 3 weeks, how many weddings have we shot, edited, all that kind of
I
stuff?
think
And
we're
you have
close to
just been,
15.
yeah, working all the way until the, wee hours of the night. So, but the energy feels good. It doesn't feel like this energy of like, oh my gosh, I have all this to do. It feels like a very powerful, progressive, positive energy that you're giving off, and it's contagious. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I really do attribute so much of that to this time of year. Like, there's something about the very long days that does fill me with inspiration, and I do feel like I've kind of hit this new stride where I'm like, I am feeling powerful. I am feeling in control.
Yeah.
It's so funny that, well, learned so much from last year, and then that feeling of just being in my, and maybe not like being in control in like a way that I'm physically conducting and control of everything, but like
Yeah.
that I feel this sense of security beneath me and I feel capable.
Yeah.
And that is whatever I'm feeling right now is what I want to embrace through the rest of this next year. I just want to have more fun. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, why am I feeling so good right now compared to last year? And I have to think that it was just all of those hard things. Like about a year ago, I was going through a lot of stuff with my family.
Totally.
I was going through a lot of stuff. We were going through a lot of stuff,
Yeah,
me and you,
for sure.
with you still being at your old job and us trying to figure out, and then me trying to figure out how to run our business, and then also starting a bit from within and feeling a lot of worry about that. And, or not even worry, but just like, how do I do this? I don't know what I'm doing. And on top of it, the freaking pandemic, and trying to hold all of my couples, my clients through and figure out how to run a business and keep everything going. And so I do think that some of it's just that, like the stressors have changed, the breakthroughs have come, things do feel better. But I also just feel like I'm happier because there's more going on. I didn't realize it. Like, for so much of the last year, like getting into this wedding season, I was filled with so much fear, thinking, I don't know if I want to do this. This is too hard. This is not what I planned for. This is not what I envisioned. And I couldn't put my finger on it other than like, I was really not happy doing what I was doing, or not happy with how things were going. I wasn't even happy shooting weddings last year. I mean, I was, but I wasn't. Like, I could always show up and like be happy for my clients. I love working with them, but there was something off about it. And now that I've shot 4 weddings in like 8 days. Like, it has been a little wacky, but I'm happy, and I'm finding the way to balance the joy of being in the moment, capturing these moments, and then being able to come back, and instead of feeling like so totally drained, I have moments where I'm drained, like starfish on the bed, and then just pass out. But I'm also having myself just stay in alignment, trying to ask myself, what do I need in this moment? And that's what I want to carry with me into the next year. And I know I'm going on and on.
No, keep going. This is great.
But the last thing that I was really thinking about that I really want to hold on to for this next year is that I feel like I'm more ready to receive than I have in a long time. And so, all of those things that I've been wanting since my early 20s, I talked about this in a podcast like a couple episodes ago, just feeling really scared to get a lot of the things that I've always wanted. But I feel like those walls are starting to break down, and I'm ready to receive the next season of my life. And I don't know what that will bring and the ups and downs of that, but I do feel like change is in the air.
Yeah, I think for, some people it happens really fast, and honestly, I don't think there's a lot of intention in behind it. But one of the things that I've noticed about you, and I mean this podcast, the A Bit From Within, the entire platform is a testament of this, but it's really about your personal gestation period to grow personally and spiritually. And I think a lot of people will suppress that because keeping up with the Joneses. Well, because my friends had kids, so I have to have kids. Well, then they have kids with a partner they shouldn't have kids with, and then they're in a relationship they don't like, and they don't realize it until they're in their mid-40s, right? And I think that's the beautiful part about how you are going about your growth is I don't think you've cheated on any steps. And I mentioned this the other day. I go on little tangents when people ask for shortcuts or cheats or hacks to things. And my whole thing is anything of quality is always going to take effort. It's always going to take time. It's always going to be longer than you probably want it to be when it gets there. And then there's going to be another goal that's going to do the same thing. So it's really embracing the journey. And I feel like even though that sucks sometimes, like legitimately sucks, you have done an amazing job of sort of speaking that truth of like, yes, this sucks. I hate being here. I hate having to shoot weddings in the middle of a pandemic when there's this deadly virus going around and there's old people here and like I'm nervous, like but being able to move through that even though it's an obstacle. And I think that's something that's really beautiful about what you've created here, how you choose to live your life, your mantras, and it's honestly what I think probably attracts people to you. Thank is you. That ability to be raw, real, and just you know, I especially in this day and age of like Instagram where, you know, everybody's a influencer or everybody's a photographer, and you know, seeing someone that actually demonstrates like this is what it's really like to do this work day in and day out is so refreshing. It's so refreshing. You and I talked about this. I wanted to mention this today, but you and I talked about, I think it was Norway you were saying that they are actually looking to pass legislation on like photos posted online if they are photoshopped. So photoshopped to be skinnier, photoshopped. And you told me the reason why, but I wanted you to like sort of touch on that. Like, what does that mean to you as far as like truth, growth, all that kind of stuff? Like, you probably tell the story better because you actually did the research, but like, let's touch on that.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I just heard a little thing about this, and I think I can't remember if it was Sweden or Norway, but they did pass legislation saying that at a certain, I don't remember what day it starts, but moving forward, you have to indicate whether your picture has a filter on it. So even if that's like smoothing your skin, like not just photoshopped, but like if you're using a filter to do your videos, things like that. Or like if you've photoshopped your waist really tiny, you have to, you know, and I do feel like that's so important because, you know, I think about the things that have held me back, and maybe to be totally transparent and honest, are still holding me back is that feeling of, well, I'm not thin enough to be posting all my yoga classes, or I'm not, you know, I don't live in a beautiful area enough to, or the lighting's not good enough. Like, I mean, I have that really critical eye, but also all of us are being constantly exposed to all of these influencers that constantly are posting these perfect images. Everything is perfect. And it goes back to those hacks, those ideas of, oh, I can just throw this into this filter and it'll just automatically put makeup on my face, even if I don't have makeup on my face, or it'll take away every wrinkle or pore you see. And it just sets up these standards for beauty that are not only unattainable, but not even real at all. They're just completely fake. And I don't have the answer to that for myself personally. I know that I value authenticity and what's real. And I also don't feel strong enough yet just to be constantly putting myself out there in all my raw form, because sometimes I feel like I'm a little haggard. But I think that that's interesting, and I have thought about this a lot of just what it meant for me to grow up during the 90s when every single person that was called beautiful was like almost emaciated, like we were only idolizing people that were so skinny, and now things are changing a lot. Like that vibe of what's beautiful is changing. There's a lot more of that fuller look, that and even just like the idea of like all sizes being beautiful. You know, like when I used to shop at Target when I was a kid, every single mannequin was the exact
Yeah,
same
like a
little
toothpick.
thing. And now when you go to Target or other places, like they've got a lot more like real shapes and sizes, and
For
that
sure.
that helps. And but how can that help, and how can we make those good strides or like make it more normal to just the idea of beauty in general
Yep.
for both and all genders or whatever.
Yeah.
But how can that be when all we're seeing online is these ways to be fake and to just show this false illusion? And I think we have like a reckoning to do with beauty in general.
Yeah.
Because beauty is not what is on the outside. Beauty is what's on the inside.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, honestly, like, again, what you're doing here on the A Bit From Within. It's like really taking a self-reflection, asking yourself, like, what matters to you? How is this coming off? How is this resonating with you? Why do you choose this, right? Why do you, if you're a person that uses a filter, it's like you're not a bad person because you used a filter. You're not a bad person because you photoshopped yourself smaller. You're not a bad person.
No.
And it's not we can't take the opposite approach, which is like, well, I'm mad at that person because they're beautiful and they Photoshop themselves and they look like they have perfect skin, and I'm not that, so I'm going to say like being me is completely beautiful too. It's not necessarily about that. What it's about is like loving yourself. And I think that is huge. It's not about attacking the other person or the other thing. What it is it's about loving yourself, and that's why I think that legislation is really cool that was passed. And I don't know what the consequence to that would be, but like it doesn't seem like there's a high risk for passing something like that, right? So an influencer can still post their photos, they can still do all that kind of stuff, and they can say, hey, by the way, this is photoshopped.
Yep.
So they can still have the beautiful photo, and then that can become an art form. And it can become something like, hey, we're able to take the computer, we're able to, pull down skin tones, pull up skin tones, smooth out your skin, those sort of things. And that can become,
Part of the art.
a niche, right?
Right.
Just-
I mean, it's part of you. Yeah. I mean, I really, really understand that because as a photographer, I know how important it is for people to feel beautiful in their pictures. And I think there is totally a space for that. Like, that's why we pose people in a flattering way, or we
Absolutely.
give them the idea of how to look in a way that will make them feel beautiful. And that does change from time to time. But I've absolutely on my own photos sometimes taken away little things, adjusted little things, making myself just a little bit more what I would like to be in that moment. And
What
I
you were
don't
going
think there's
for.
anything wrong with that, but I think it's important for us to be totally in that transparency of like, yeah, this is not the raw, real version of me. There's a sense of idealism here.
Yeah.
And
that's okay.
And that there's space for that too. And especially because so much of what our pictures are become a projection of who we're not just trying to be, although there is that too, but also there's a feeling of you just wanting you to reflect your inner light. And so I do
I like
understand that desire to change things. But the part that's tricky about that is that why are we trying to change it into that?
Yeah, and that
comes from learned social conditions of what is beauty and what is
and that's where
acceptable.
I think the honesty is, will tear down that wall, because I think what you're mentioning, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're mentioning in this space of truth and growth and all this kind of stuff is like the people that are consuming this content, maybe they see point A to point B, and they may be at A, and they see some beautiful Instagram model that's at point B, and they're like, well, I want to be like her. What do I do? And I think a lot about our like social and like just media in general, like the pop media, the pop culture, those sort of things, where it's like this, like everyone has plastic surgery, everyone has this, and instead of like, okay, well, I want to be beautiful, or I want to be strong, or I want to have a certain physique, and instead of researching, doing it the right way, and it might take you a year or two to get there.
Yeah.
It's the first option is plastic surgery. And I think that's the danger, is like, not that plastic surgery is bad. It might be good for people. And honestly, there's probably some people that have conditions. Like, I know a lot of people that have issues with their nose and breathing, and they have to get plastic surgery to fix that. And that's not a bad thing. So it's not necessarily one's good or evil. I think it comes back to whether the folks consuming that understand that, like, hey, you are okay and you are perfect the way you are, and your job is to love yourself. And if you want to go for this, go for it. That's fine. But don't go for it because you feel obligated, because that's what the culture is telling you. That's what the social construct is telling you. Go for it because that's who you truly are, and that's your inner light, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but I also have this part of me that's like, gets really resistant hearing that, because so much of people, you, like what you're saying is like, oh, I want to be like ripped like that person, or I want to be as thin as that person. My body actually may never be able to do that.
Sure.
And
yeah.
in that way,
Yeah.
I can only work with what my body is capable of.
Totally.
And if I go down a rabbit hole of, oh, in a year, if you just do this program, you're going to be this, or if you just get in a calorie deficit, or blah, 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 that may not work.
Sure,
Your
yeah.
hormones may not actually be allowing that.
Yeah.
You there's so many things when it comes to actually transforming your physical body that can cause you so much pain when you're aspiring to be something that you're not. And so that's why I like what you said about, it's really about learning to love yourself.
Yeah, and it's
body.
I guess to clarify on the point I'm making there is it's not, hey, do this. The research isn't like, hey, you need to be in a calorie deficit and you need to lift weights and you need to do high intensity interval training to get this body. The research is, what is the journey? What is the path you're taking to learn to love yourself?
Yes.
You know what
absolutely.
I mean? And that's where
a
people
much
get it
more valuable journey anyway.
People get that wrong all the time, and I've got it wrong personally.
Wrong too.
But like it's
an easy thing to get wrong.
And the other thing we got to be careful of is the adverse reaction to that, which is like, well, my body may never be that, so I am going to never do that. I don't believe in that. That doesn't work for me. It's like, there could be things that benefit you in that, but the result that you're looking for, whether it's maybe a physique thing, maybe it's a shape thing, yeah, you're right. It probably will never be that, but that doesn't mean cardio isn't good for you. That doesn't mean eating healthy isn't good for you. It's still good for you, but the end goal, which is, hey, I want to have this perfection of a body, that's where it's wrong, right? It's that mindset. I
think so, and I do think though that before you can ever aspire towards changing your body, I think what really matters is doing things that are actually feeling good for you. So it's not about cardio. It's about movement. For any body is a positive thing. When
Absolutely.
you move, you feel things move through you. You have this feeling of fire and air. We go back to the elements, right?
Yeah, totally.
Even like people who have too much fire in them, like I think of one of my friends in particular who's just such an energizer. She's so hard on herself. She's always going. She wants to work out like way too much. And then she gets really down, and I think, that's because you need some water, sister. You need to sit and you need to meditate, because you know what? It's actually going to benefit from that. Probably your metabolism, probably your sense of stress, you know. So it's, to me, I always go back to the elements. And then the other thing that I think is so important before you start going to either side of the coin, before you start saying, I'm never going to be that, so I'm going to just embrace what I am and only do this. Or the opposite of, I'm never going to be satisfied with just being what I am. I have to change. It's not okay to just be where you are. Is you actually do have to sit and reckon with, what are your own perceptions about what is beautiful and what is worthy.
Yeah, totally.
Because if you can't do that, then you are constantly actually just battling that part of yourself, or you're not even yourself, but your perceptions. And a lot of us there is so much fat shaming built into our culture where we're absolutely disgusted or displeased by anything that is bigger.
Yeah,
and there's no space for that in self-compassion.
Yeah, I mean,
there's not. You will never fully transform your body from that place of hating a certain type of thing or
Yep.
or feeling that you are that will never allow you to love yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been studies done on that where, you know, whether it's, you know, a social experiment of like, you know, a fat person asking for help in public and people just like, no, I don't have time. And then like a skinny, attractive person doing the same thing and people bend over backwards for them.
That makes me so mad.
Well, and I think that's what we're talking about here with this whole legislation being passed over in Sweden or Norway. It's really about like, let's pull the veil back for 2 seconds and let's make sure that like, hey, by the way, like if you are feeling ashamed or if you're feeling these emotions because you've been conditioned to, this is fake. This isn't real. This can be an art. This can be something that's really cool. This can be something that you can be into. But putting the expectation on yourself that you need to be that is not something that we should ever do. And I think that's, I think you're right. I think it goes back to balance. And actually this leads me into my next question, which is, you know, when we think about where we're at right now with the summer solstice being the longest days, feeling really energized. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like astrologically, how does like going through like the last couple weeks in that retrograde that we went through and how does that play a part? How does the astrology of this play a part in not only growth, but like moving forward and utilizing this time of year and these special moments where we have longer days or where, you know, things are happening and energy's moving?
I think it's different every year because even though the sun comes back to the same place, which is in Cancer this time every year, the rest of the planets are moving.
Yep.
And so this year in particular is really interesting because there's a lot of retrograde energy. We just went through like this huge Mercury retrograde, which is ending on Tuesday. Thank God. It's been a rough one in a lot of ways.
I felt it. Like I've had my car's been in the shop for almost a month now. It's probably going to be there for another 2 months. Just based on that and just things not working, you know?
Yeah. Even just you and I were driving in traffic the other day and I was just like, come on. Like everything felt like resistance.
Totally.
And that's just among a lot of other things. I think a lot of people are feeling that specific Mercury retrograde energy. But there's other planets that are moving in retrograde right now too. I believe either Saturn or Jupiter or both of them. This is off the top of my head because I don't have my research in front of me. And I believe Neptune as well have just begun like their retrograde periods. And so during retrogrades, you know, it's like I always say, whenever there's planets in retrograde, it's a time for a certain area of your life that you get an opportunity to re-examine, redesign, readjust, remember, reflect, you know, all of these things that are part of our daily experience of our life where we can move forward. We can take those 2 steps forward. But often, as we all know, it's not just a walk up a hill. It's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And those retrograde moments are that 1 step back. And what I've been trying to embrace in my life is not being as frustrated by that or accepting the frustration I feel from that as part of the process. And I think that that's definitely up this year for sure with what's happening astrologically. There's a lot of, it's interesting because there's not a, like, this year's supposed to be a little bit better astrologically than 2020 was.
Sure.
But it's still not as good as hopefully next year will be.
Yeah.
As far as like, there's been a lot of challenging placements. And I think that what I love about astrology is being able to find the pieces in your own natal chart or your own birth chart or astrologically that you really understand and connect with. And that's why, like, one of the things that I've been thinking about for me personally, I've been, you know, deep diving into this astrology thing more and more each day. And I've been thinking about my own natal chart, especially right now around my birthday, and just thinking about where was the sun and like where was all the planets when I was born, you know, where's my rising sign, all of this. And I've been thinking specifically about my midheaven, which is like the top point in your chart. And my sun in Cancer sits like right next to my midheaven. And it's interesting because my midheaven, even though it's really close to Cancer, because I'm like born on the very first day of Cancer. Actually, you and I are both 0 degree signs. He's a 0 degree Scorpio and I'm a 0 degree Cancer. And that's just like the first degree of a new sign. And so because of that, my midheaven is in Gemini. And your midheaven kind of represents like who you are or who the public sees you as. Like, what are you well known for? And I won't go too much down a tangent or rabbit hole on this, but I've just been thinking about the ways that I want to shine in this world. And it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with the whole like being comfortable with being on social media or putting yourself out there or feeling capable. And the truth is, like, social media is such a great way to connect with people. And I think of so many people that I follow either on Instagram or especially on TikTok that are just being vulnerable enough to share their process and share and in a way, like, I'm doing that too. I'm most comfortably through the podcast and a little bit through Instagram. And one of the things that I'm hoping to kind of allow myself to step in more, because it's something that I'm actually trying to understand about my natal chart, is I do have this really interesting placement of the sun in my 10th house, which is this house of public perception. And there should be theoretically this ability for me to go for my goals, to shine in public, to be able to have that light that people want to see or are interested in. But I think that what that requires is me allowing myself to be seen in that way.
Yep.
And so that's another one of the things that I want to work on this year, is just stop caring about what other people think of me, or stop trying to let things be perfect and let go of some of that Virgo rising critical stuff that's like not good enough, and just embrace, yes, it's good enough.
Totally.
Yes, it matters. Yeah. Yes, it's okay to post things even if it's not perfect. Like, why am I always judging what's good enough, and instead of just being in the experience? Because you know, it's like we've been talking about a lot lately, like I'm really starting to feel the effects of getting older, and I've been thinking a lot about mortality, and just want to live my life while I have it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been saying is, like, we just don't have time, you know, and I think that's the biggest illusion that a lot of us think we have this time. We have time to, I'll put that off and I'll do it another day, or I'll blah, blah, blah. And I think that can be one of the biggest lies you tell yourself as an individual. And I've been trying to live in that. I've been trying to live in that in our relationship. When we go to our couples therapy, because we're working to take the next step, it's like, I don't have time to be stubborn about this. I don't have time to lie about where I'm messing up inside of the relationship. I don't have time to lie about where I'm at with my health. I don't have time, because I am 30 years old, and before I know it, I'll be 40 years old, and before I know it, I'll be 50 years old. So I think that shift in perspective is really important in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And then there's sort of two sides to that, which is going back to what we talked about, is the fear around putting something out that's not refined or good enough because you see a bunch of other people putting out refined, good stuff, or is the fear coming from within a self-worth issue, you know? And I think those things are tied together. But I think that's why, you know, like, I wanted to ask that question about the law that was passed, is because that's so powerful. And one way or another, I think a lot of us have been victims to that a little bit, you know? And I think it's obviously, like, some people more than others, but, you know, there's been things where I'm like, man, I really need the best camera, or the best this, or the best that to shoot something, or to make a project with my video stuff and my video career. And the truth of the matter is I just really needed to go do it. I really needed to get out there and figure out what I did need, and how a tool could help me. And I think that's no different with, you know, how you're perceived and how you want people to, you know, see you, but also like what you can offer the world, you know? And I think that's the really important thing to focus on, is like, what can you offer the world, and how is that going to make someone's day better? How is it going to make your day better, right?
Yeah.
Like feeling that amount of worth there. So,
yeah, that's interesting
yep.
though, because for you and I, like, I think we both struggle with some self-worth issues in
Sure.
probably different ways, but we both manifest it very differently, because
Sure.
you
Yeah.
did want all of the gear and all of the stuff, and that would help you feel like you were worthy, of belonging, or that, you could
Like
show up and really
having a
do a great
seat at the
job.
table sort of deal. You know what I mean?
And for me, I felt like in order to prove myself, I needed to do it with only the bare minimum. Like, give me the basic tools I need that I can make last a long time, and I'm going to do it with this, because I have to prove my worth with nothing before
Yep.
I can have things. And so it's interesting how all of that manifests in very different ways.
Yeah. And I mean, that's two different approaches that both have pros and cons, right? Like,
And have created plenty of opportunity for us
to grow. And that's really what this has been all about. And, this last year has been, even though it's been hard, it's been a lot of, like you said, retrograde energy. And I think we all felt that, but like feeling that on a daily basis, I think one of the first things we can talk about is like the self-awareness piece, the education piece. Is like, once you know, like, okay, there's resistance here, I can acknowledge that resistance and then move on. Okay, I'm having a hard time juggling this. Okay, like, how do I acknowledge that and then be prepared to hike that mountain, metaphorically. So, well, that was awesome. I have one final question for you,
okay.
and maybe a two-part, because I want to ask the a bit from within you question. But I also want to ask maybe more of a philosophical question of like, what does it mean? I guess I'll start with the a bit from within question, and if you answer it in this one, we'll just leave it at that. Okay. But if I want to ask my other question after it, but it's sort of the same question. So, can you share, based on what we talked about, a bit from within you?
I think the bit from within right now is just this feeling of gratitude for patience. Because there's been so much of my life that it's just been such a slow journey.
Mm-hmm.
And even as I look back on this past like year and a quarter of doing a bit from within, I felt so often like so much shame around not having enough answers, or not having enough content, or not having enough things that I'm offering people through like things that I figured out, because over and over again I'm just like, I don't have anything figured out. I am at a loss. But through that and not giving up, it just allows me to see like patience has been such a great gift. And if I look back at my 20s, like there's this gift of lots of experience, lots of love, lots of connection, lots of friendships, lots of jobs, lots of clients, lots of seeing things, lots of figuring out what was happening inside of me. And nothing that I thought would have happened in my 20s is what I did in my 20s.
Sure.
And so because of that, there's patience. And it's not something that I feel in the moment. It's something that I look back in hindsight, and my soul tells me, like, you've been patient, you've been waiting, you've been experiencing, you've been showing up. And right now, in this moment, I'm just feeling grateful for that. I'm feeling not in a rush. I'm feeling not dissatisfied with the pace. I'm feeling exactly where I need to be in the mess that has unfolded in my life.
For sure. That's beautiful. I really love that. And yeah, I mean, when I think about you, when I think about where you're at, I think patience. And it's been such a beautiful process to watch, because that's not easy. It's probably one of the hardest things, but I do want to ask you my second question.
Okay.
It's pretty deep.
Okay.
So take your time.
Uh-oh.
What is the meaning of life?
You would ask this question.
I'm a Scorpio.
Oh
okay?
my gosh. What is the meaning of life? There's a million ways you can answer that question, but the summer child inside of me at this time of year, at the peak of summer, the beginning and this midsummer time, feels like the meaning of life is to take the journey, to laugh, to be joyful, to feel sorrow, to cry, to take the journey, to be, I think of the astrological wheel and how like they liken Aries to like when you're like a toddler, and like toddlers can be like a little selfish and like sometimes Aries have parts of their personality that can, or a
Toddlers
tendency
can
to
be little demons sometimes.
But there's also a vitality there, and there's a determination too. And then it kind of continues, and they say like, this time of year, like Cancer, and summer is kind of likened to being in that like magic of being like 21, when you're like, you're completed with your childhood and your adolescence, but you're also not really an adult. You're not an experienced adult, and you're kind of lost in this like in between, but there is a magic there. There's a sense of wonder. And then it kind of continues, until you go all the way to the end of the wheel, which is Pisces. And I always think of Pisces as like, those really old people that like, whose like eyes are almost glazed over, and like they're not even here half the time, but not in a bad way, like not in a medical way, but like in a spiritual way. Like they are somewhere else. They're in like the other half. They're so deeply spiritual that when you get around them, you can feel that connection to the divine and that deep sense of intuition and that dreamy quality. And I think the meaning of life is taking that journey.
I love that.
Is just,
that's really cool.
Go on the journey, live the life, like eat the food, kiss the people, like experience the culture,
the seasons of life.
Exactly. Be in the seasons and find a way to be grateful for it all.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful answer, and a beautiful, I guess, like, I don't want to say like analogy, but an example of, how astrology is so powerful. I think a lot of people get lost in the self-perception or the self-awareness of astrology, but really, like, it's, from what I'm hearing you say, it's like there's all these different energies in the world and in the universe, and these alignments and these things have been a way to really understand these energies and understand where you're at. And the more understanding you have toward that, like you with your patients, the more calm, the more at peace, the more love you can give yourself, the more love you can give other people around you. So, beautiful answer, and thank you so much, and happy early birthday.
Thank you so
to
much.
You. This is we do birthday weekends around here, so
no, we do birthday months.
Oh, birthday months.
Weeks,
excuse me.
And then it officially, the birthday weekend started yesterday.
Yeah.
My official birthday is on Tuesday, the day this will drop.
So yeah, let's that's amazing.
And if I can ask everyone to give me a birthday present, that would be just to either like share the podcast or leave a rating or review. Like that would be so amazing. I would be so grateful if you can give me that birthday wish, help me continue to grow this platform, and just know how grateful I am to be sharing my very slow journey with all of you.
It's like the story of the turtle and the rabbit, you know what I mean? So it's beautiful. Thank you so much. Let's do our card drawing real quick.
Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I want to do
Since
it.
You're the host?
I'm the host. I'm the host with the most.
This is the Love and Relationships Affirmators deck.
All right. Sound effects. Ooh, that was a good one. All right. I'm not even going to mess with it. That was too good. All right, pick a card. Take your time. Perfect.
All right. This card says listening. I activate my receptive side and become an engaged, intuitive, professional-grade listener. Supercharged listening gives me the ability to not only hear the words others are saying, but also to perceive the emotions hiding behind their words. Armed with this knowledge, I'll be in a great position to give them exactly what they need, or if I prefer, to dominate the planet.
Whoa. Watch
Wow,
out.
super skills.
All right, I pulled honesty. This heralds a wonderful time of rooting yourself in complete and total honesty. It might seem scary to tell the truth all the time, with everyone, about everything, but when you practice radical honesty, you can stop hiding and start relaxing. The best part is, honesty from you inspires honesty from others, where it results in root and toot and trust, the root and toot and trust parade, that's weird, and everyone's invited, except the bagpipe player, but you all know they'll show up anyways. I love that. I love that because I recently read a book that talked about, one of the chapters was like, tell the truth all the time. And in the book, there was this gentleman that was helping a guy that kept trying to sell his stuff because he was a severe alcoholic, and in order to keep up with his addiction, he would sell like his microwave, like random stuff. And the guy felt bad, so he's like, I'll come to his door at 1 a.m. in the morning and sell this. And he used the example of like, he told that guy the truth, like, I cannot buy your microwave because I know you're going to go use it for alcohol, and I know you're going to use it to this, and I can't do that in good faith. But and I guess from that guy got clean and sober over the next year or so. So telling the truth and honesty is really big, and obviously listening's huge too. So
I think both of those go hand in hand in a really beautiful way too, because if somebody's trying to be honest with you but you're not listening, you're not hearing them. And if you are trying to be honest, it could be important to start that work with those who are actually listening to you.
You know what's insane?
What?
This entire podcast was basically the theme of honesty and listening.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's how it works.
That's
with
really
these
cool.
cards.
That's really cool. So, I mean, we just spent almost 50 minutes talking about how being honest, and then being able to listen why people are doing the things they're doing,
and to listen to what's really going on inside. To be honest with yourself.
100%. Yeah. Wow. Powerful. So, thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to Felicia. And
thank you, everyone.
If you'd be so kind to like the podcast, share it with anybody that you think it would inspire them. Obviously, I'm a guest host, so Felicia will be back next week with another episode. But thank you again, and I hope you guys all have a great day.